Thank you all speakers for your question today. I have a very quick question. You talked about Iran being out of jurisdiction because it's not a member of the International Criminal Court. Can the Bashir scenario ever be applicable to the Islamic Republic's rulers? Could you explain a bit of that? And a very quick question for our wonderful documentary maker, Masoud. We discussed this during the break. Just a point you made in your introduction of the film, that the people who are victims of violence take time before they can actually vocalize what's happened to them. And that's very relevant to what's happening in Iran today. We see a lot of people are actually brave enough to come forward, but then at the same time a lot of people are not. And the question is being asked whether what is actually happening because there are not enough people coming forward. So the point that you make, if you made any research into the fact that people take time, victims of violence take time before they can vocalize it, I'd like to hear about that.
Thank you for bringing this issue. It's a phenomenon everywhere. I had this experience in the Chile 2000, which we had a chance to interview some survivor from 1973. It's not easy issue for political prisoners to their story. Okay? Again, it was so interesting. I was talking to with people who had experiences and they are not able to tell it. So it means it's very important to be kind to them and let them they go through their own process. So it means don't expect what happened in Iran and don't expect from people who were tortured during in prison and quickly come and talk about themselves. Actually, that's why again it's important people from our generation talk about that because we can provide some experiences. We went through these things, we are dealing with this issue, and I think it's our responsibility, okay, to talk about that, which is give a room and a space to them. They come and start to talk.
The answer is no. The answer is that the International Criminal Court has no jurisdiction over Iran. The basis for jurisdiction is either if Iran ratifies the statute, which it has not, and it will not do, most certainly, or if the UN Security Council refers the situation as it did in the case of Darfur, where Sudan was not a signatory, but the Security Council referred the situation. And as I said, the mood at present, the Russian and the Chinese, the British, the French, the Americans, permanent members of the Security Council, is to engage with Iran. It's all about dialogue and engagement. And it's interesting that that is being portrayed as political realism. And that's what exactly we were told in Yugoslavia, that you should be realistic. Sure, Slobodan Milosevic is going to do ethnic cleansing, but we want to bring an end to the war, we need to negotiate with them. And the reason why the tribunal was successful is not because of the loftiness of human rights principles, but because political realists realized that the appeasement of fascists is unrealistic. And I'm hoping that this lesson will be learned in the case of Iran, that a government, half of whose ministers are implicated in murder and torture and rape, is not a reliable government. It's almost like the logic that a child could understand, but not decision makers. I also failed to mention one thing that you can raise further with Babak Ahmad and the organization, which is an initiative to have a people's tribunal. As part of this process of uncovering the truth and publicizing it, which I think is very important in creating, how would you translate jab, the kind of the point of gravity of the discourse among the Iranian democratic movement. And you know that during the Vietnam War there was the famous Russell Tribunal, Bertrand Russell and Jean-Paul Sartre and a lot of anti-Vietnam activists established a tribunal, which of course is a people's tribunal, it has no official function. But it's a semi-judicial process where the evidence is presented and a panel of eminent judges make some sort of a ruling. And I hope that this is something that the organizers can develop further as part of the process of, once again, uncovering the facts and educating the Iranian public about what happened in 1988. And more important than anything, something we should do every opportunity that we get, naming and shaming the perpetrators so that everyone knows who they are. And finally, the normal course of events, national courts should prosecute people for these crimes. That's the basis of the International Criminal Court, that only when national courts fail to do so would the International Court. And my hope is that we will one day have an Iran in which the judiciary, instead of being an instrument of repression, will be an instrument of justice. And ideally, the Iranian people themselves would bring these people to justice and claim ownership over their own past, rather than letting some people in The Hague do that for them.
My name is Nazmin. I'm sorry, I'm
Could we spoke back to that? Unless I did the crowd, it's going to be difficult to run this. And then next, back.
Thank you very much for organizing this fantastic day. It's been very emotional, I think, for all of us here. One of the title of the film was The Tree That Remembers. And you specifically mentioned that we should remember and not forget stories so that we do not make the same mistakes again. I think that perhaps we have forgotten to mention the stories of those who were assassinated, murdered before 1981 because of the revolution. Also, the Cinema Rex incident. Would it be fair to say that it is time for us to also come to terms with our humanity and say that we have all suffered, and that at one point that we reach out to each other through our humanity, and also remember those victims of the revolution?
I appreciate that you raised this issue. Yes, for sure, it's important. It's so important that we can talk about atrocity. We have to find its root, okay? And don't forget, I'm making one documentary, 15 minutes. I cannot address all these issues, and what I was trying to do is materialize our experiences, which was in that time in this film done. It's not actually, it's all 7 minutes animation done almost in 2 years, and done by myself. And after that, for years I was working to finish this one, and we had so much difficulty bringing people to talk about this issue. So what I did in this film, and actually, as you know, film does one or two things. Yes, I materialize our experiences and try to make it bring it to kind of turn it to the universal experience.
I'm just going to... Yes, no, just very, very briefly. I think your point goes to the essence of what human rights are all about. I was amicus in the U.S. Supreme Court case against Donald Rumsfeld in the court of Yasser Hamdi, a Yemeni national who was in Guantanamo Bay. Many of my friends thought, you're insane, why are you supporting terrorists? And that's the whole point. We do not ask whether we agree with the political or religious beliefs of someone. And I must say that one of the reasons why the 1988 massacre has not been talked about is because the victims were Mujahideen Khalq, Fadar al-Khalq, Tude, and many people did not agree with their political ideology, so they swept aside the human rights. And that's a shame for all of us in Iran. And I would say the same thing about the officials of the Shah's government that were executed and tortured after summary trials, and about reformists, and about Kurds and Baluch and Baha'is and Jews and whatever the case may be. And if the Iranians begin to understand that very factor, then they will have taken a large step towards creating a culture of human rights. One small point, you said assassinations. The thing that came to mind were the 260 Iranian dissidents that were killed in Europe. Something which is remarkable that there were only a handful of prosecutions. And this goes back to the complicity of these governments in allowing the Islamic Republic to perpetrate this violence. How did that violence come to an end? You'll know about the Mykonos massacre in Berlin, and the fact that finally the German judiciary, against the wishes of the German Foreign Ministry, prosecuted the individuals. In protest, all European ambassadors, with the exception of Greece, were withdrawn from Tehran. There have been no more assassinations in Europe since the Mykonos judgment. And that is an example of what the Europeans could do if they took seriously their economic leverage and told Iran that we are not going to do business with you if you murder and rape people in your prisons. And in this country, the freezing of the assets of Mojtaba Khomeini, to the extent, I believe, of £1 billion right here in this city, which still remains under a cloud of mystery, is exactly what the European governments need to do to bring this regime to its knees.
We know that the Iranian government has been killing the Iranian people since the beginning. The British, American, and other foreign governments have been aware of that. They have supported Iran in different ways, and the Iranian government, in order to exist, continue to massacre people in different parts of the country. Now, it is only up to us. 30 years have proved that the foreigners will not help the Iranian people to change this government, and that the policies of this government will not change until we change this regime. Therefore, I think it is up to all, to us, to Iranians, to get united, as the Iranians inside Iran appeared at least 4 times in meetings to say that they don't want this regime. And the foreign governments, especially the British government, must understand that we hold them responsible. All the governments that sample help the Iranian regime in massacring Iranian people. And we also know that we will work hard, and we know that one day we can change this regime. And when we change this regime, all the files will be open, and everybody will know that who has worked with this government and which foreign countries have supported this government in doing what it is doing now.
Mr. Doctor, thank you very much for the list you given about the all tribunal ayatollahs. My question is here, why you don't name Karoubi, Mir Hossein Mousavi, and Khatami? Mir Hossein Mousavi was the prime minister during that time we are speaking about, was one of the most powerful man in the Iran, killed thousands and thousands of people in Iran. I'm trying to stop and stay away from that time. So I just wanted to know why you censor it, or why you don't name those three guys. Is that because they are with the green, let's say, peoples with the green, it colors us knowing what it is. I would like to have the answer.